Good morning and welcome to the program. This is In Touch, and it is our weekly half-hour public affairs show, which means if you are a nonprofit group or organization here in the Hudson Valley, we'd love to have you on the show. We'd love to talk about what is important to you, where you are in the Hudson Valley, with your community, the people that you serve. If you are a company in the Hudson Valley helping out a nonprofit group organization, whether fiscally through an informational drive, whatever it may be, we'd love to have you on the show. So I'm going to turn the microphone on and welcome our guest this morning. He's not been on the show, but I've heard so many great things about his organization. We've been watching the organization. I'm aware of some of the things he does. Michael Berg is the executive director of Family of Woodstock, Inc. So, Michael, thank you very much for taking the time to be here.
Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. We appreciate it.
This is very cool. Like I said, I think most people are like, "Oh, Family of Woodstock. Yeah, I've heard of that." But do people really know all that you do?
Well, no, I'm not even sure I know all that we do. But one of the things that we struggle with is, family. Yeah, I've heard of them, but I didn't know you did that.
Right.
You know, and so it's unusual to have the opportunity to sort of give the scope of the agency.
So give me a little bit of a background. You know, if someone is like, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of Family," but do you really know like how it started? You know, whether you want a mission statement, kind of fill us in a little bit.
Well, the agency started about 47 years ago, after the rock festival that carried the Woodstock name and happened 115 miles away in Bethel.
Right.
But afterward, the town was inundated with young people looking for Bob Dylan and the Woodstock Nation. It sounds very strange now, but even for a few years after that. And so what happened was the town was not expecting this, and so a group of people came together, and at that meeting, a woman named Gail Varsi said, "Well, if there's a problem in the town, call me, 679-2485. And then when she had to go out, she would call her friend, "Listen, I got to go shopping. Come answer the phone." Well, from those incredibly rudimentary beginnings, we are the oldest continuously operating emergency switchboard in the country. And
Wow.
Somebody has been answering 679-2485 and about 11 other numbers now for 47 years, 24 hours a day. And it speaks to an amazing commitment of people to be available, to be a resource, to be someplace that people can call day or night. And the principles around which Family were built are quite simple but very profound, namely that we don't tell people what to do. We do not burden people with our judgments, and we hold people's stuff confidential.
Wow.
And so, in one sense, we train people to 1,000 ways to say, and how are you feeling about that now? And what's going on for you now? All to bring them out and to help people to just talk about what's happening for them.
Wow. How powerful is that?
It really is. It really is. And so we started in Woodstock in 1970, and a year later, the then Ulster County Narcotics Guidance Council came to us and said they wanted to put 2 tie lines in from Kingston into our office in Woodstock. And in order to understand the meaning of that, you have to understand that in 1971, Saugerties was a long-distance call from Woodstock, as was Phoenicia.
Wow.
But all of them, including Rhinebeck, were local calls to Kingston. So by putting those 2 tie lines in, they made us toll-free in the northern part of the county.
Wow.
And then in 1975, the then Community Services Board approached us with mental health money to put in tie lines from Kerhonkson and New Paltz, which would make us toll-free countywide. And we said to them, "Well, gee, you know, we go out in drug emergencies." And they said, "Oh." I said, "But we're an hour and 15 minutes away from Ellenville. So give us a little more money and we'll train a group of people in Ellenville, we'll train a group of people in New Paltz, and they'll be on call to the hotline." And they said, "Oh, okay." And so we went down to Ellenville, and we attracted a totally different group of people than in Woodstock. I mean, these were heavy hitters, a member of the school board, the assistant superintendent, somebody high up in the prisons, and they loved the training. very moving for them. And at the end of that, they said, "Where's our office?" And we said, "We don't have an office for you." And 2 weeks it took them, they had an office. The library gave them a room, the churches paid for their phone, and they were up and running. And in a different but similar way, the same thing happened in New Paltz. So by 1975, we were in Woodstock, New Paltz, and Ellenville, and we didn't deliver a service in Kingston at that point. And so the agency grew as people presented problems that they needed help. We didn't have we're going to be a domestic homeless. We were just helping people. And so the first big issue, of course, was housing and people showing up without a place to stay, kids showing up. And so initially we took kids into our homes. It sounds strange now, but it was, without a thought. Then when that got old, we would call the church. And I have to say, at those days, we were very rudimentary and very direct. And so if a church said yes, we would call them every night until they would say no. And then we would find somebody else because we didn't have any other resources.
Right.
So, but then we opened up a thing called the Roadhouse. And it was down the street from our Woodstock office. And so it opened at 10 at night when the Woodstock office closed for the public. And it would close at 9 in the morning when the Woodstock opened. And so it was a place for people to crash. And meanwhile, in about 1974, we were told that taking children into our homes was illegal, and that if we wanted to do that, we had to develop a formal program. And so we wrote a grant to the then Division for Youth of New York State in 1975. Unbeknownst to us, in the summer of 1975, the first serial grave site for teens was found in Texas, 27 bodies. And as is wont to happen with government funding, that moved the government to create, a federal government, to create runaway and homeless youth money. And so early in February of 1976, we got a phone call from the Division for Youth saying, "We've given your grant over to the feds. They're coming to see your facility tomorrow." And we said, "Oh."
Okay.
And so we had proposed a beautiful house up on Mead Mountain, Dr. Brandt's house. And I said, "Gee, we should just check out Dr. Brandt's house before we show it to them." We haven't been there in a while. Drove up, beautiful view, beautiful house. Was one problem. They had used 2 short nails and half the roof had slid off the building. There was a 10-foot snowdrift in the living room. We didn't show them Dr. Brandt's house.
No. I was like, no, let's not go there.
Let's pass.
Okay.
So one of our board members had a house in Olive. It wasn't a great house, and the feds, we showed them that. They said they loved the agency, they liked the program. The house wasn't great, but they would fund it. And we opened up Family House in 1976. Wow. And that was very early in the runaway and homeless youth programming.
Wow.
Then in so I was talking about the Roadhouse, and if you went into Family of Woodstock at like 9:45 any night in 1977 or 78, you would find the place filled with women and children. And we said, "What's that about? Why are women and children out in the middle of the night?"
Right.
And that was our first real contact with domestic violence.
Oh.
And so when we found that to be the case, we decided that we had to do something about it.
Yeah.
And we opened a domestic violence shelter in 1980 in Kingston area. And it was the first domestic violence shelter between Yonkers and Albany. And it served the whole Mid-Hudson Valley. And it was always full. Initially, it was really always full. And so that was an experience, and we learned a lot about it. And 2 years later, we decided that if we just ran a shelter, we were really not dealing with the problem. We were putting a Band-Aid on a festering wound. And so 2 years after that, we opened a program we called Evolve. It was a batterers program. And uh, initially we followed a model that was the model at that time, a 6-week psychoeducational. You will not think of the children. What are you doing?
Right.
And we ran that for 6 months, and we felt that it was totally ineffective.
Yeah.
And so we kept pushing the length of the program. And we literally pushed the length of the program to 1 year, weekly groups. And we started to see real change.
Wow.
And so now we run 8 weekly groups, one in Spanish, one for women, and 6 others. One in Ellenville, the rest in Kingston. And the groups, we had to shorten the length of the groups because we couldn't afford to run that many. But successful completion is 33 weeks.
Wow.
And what we found by comparing the people who successfully completed the program against the people that had gotten a domestic incident report, that 75% of the men had no involvement after that.
Mm.
And so we were very pleased
That's
with that.
powerful.
We'd like it to be 100%, of course, but given the circumstance and that often there are carryover issues, we were pleased with that, and we continue to do that work. So we've developed a lot of programming. We run 4 shelters now. I'm trying to bring it up to the present because I think it's more than a half hour's worth of history. But we run 4 shelters now. One of them is the Runaway Shelter Family House, which moved to the middle of the county to Rosendale when the feds required that we be allowed to give children, to facilitate youth going back to their home school district.
Oh, okay.
In fact, when they did that, it was very powerful because when they did that, the requirement came in February. And so we provided it to every school district in the county. And every child chose to go back home to their home school district rather than to go to the district of location of the shelter, which said to us that being removed from their home, the connection to school, to their friends, to their teachers was very powerful and very important.
Mm-hmm.
So we run Family House. It's a 14-bed shelter. We run a Washburn House, which is a 17-bed domestic violence shelter. We run the Darmstadt Shelter for the Homeless, which is a homeless shelter for single individuals, many of whom are in recovery or struggling with substance abuse and mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 23 beds. And then we run a shelter for homeless families called the Family Inn, which is 27 beds. Wow. So we're doing a lot, and we serve a lot of people.
He says that so quietly in just a simple statement. But as you said, the history of the organization and all that you've done, what amazes me is, first off, every time I do a show, I always learn something. This is no exception. I realize I'd only scratched the surface, which is why it's great that you're on the show today, because I feel like there's other people listening going, I get exactly what you're saying, Beth. The other thing is that I like is, when you said, you didn't set out to be anything other than helping people. And you have stayed true to that. When like you said, why are there so many women and children out at night? What is that all about? What is happening? In other words, you guys didn't predetermine what you felt the issues were. You saw them, they happened, you addressed them.
Well, and you learn.
Yeah.
Like right now, we're very actively studying trauma-informed care.
Yeah.
Many of the people that we help, particularly the youth, are damaged by their experiences as younger children. Mm-hmm. And so we're part of a group that went and into a national study group. And you start with the rudimentary stuff, but as you learn more about the needs of the people you're serving, you learn more as to how to help them and what the current state of the art is. And so that's what we're trying to do. We don't have terrific salaries. We wish we did, but the people are very, very dedicated and are working because they want to help the people that they're serving.
Dr. Crenshaw with trauma-informed care at the Children's Home of Poughkeepsie, and he just did a seminar. My husband works for the county, and so he just was a keynote speaker. And my husband texted me in the middle of that and said, "Have you ever had him on the show to talk about this?" And we have. And so when you bring that up, I go right back to like it's not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. What happened?
I'll bring up another subject. Restorative justice is an area that we're now very involved in and working with the schools in. A little background on that.
Yeah, because I'm not familiar.
Restorative justice conceives of finding a way for the person that did something wrong to make it right.
Okay, cool.
And so the Department of Criminal Justice Services, the state agency, put out a request for to develop a program, and they offered us different models, and we got the grant, and we chose the model of juvenile accountability boards, which is a program where you bring people in who are somewhat leaders of the community, and you train them in restorative justice issues. And then out of the group, 2 or 3 of the members will meet with a young person. The target population was 7 to 15-year-olds that had committed a misdemeanor or a felony. And so instead of, how could you, scolding, the group, 3 of the group would meet with the young person and ask them what they did. And how did they hurt themselves? And who did they hurt? And how did they hurt their family? And how did they hurt the person that they damaged? And now what are they going to do to make it right? And develop a plan, literally a plan for what they're going to do to make it right.
Wow.
Then the young person works with one of our caseworkers for a couple of months, sometimes 3, and it's not just the plan, but it's also life skills and maybe some family mediation. A lot of these young people, they're at distance with their own families. And at the end of the 3 months, they come back before the group and they tell them what's happened. We're on the radio, but when they first go before the group, the kids are down and their heads down and they're sort of ashamed. And when they come back, they're up and they're making eye contact and they're proud of what they did. So as an example, community service is part of it. So as an example, we had a young person who defaced buses and was brought before this program and then went off with the caseworker. And the community service that they decided to do was for this young person to help seniors get on the bus, travel the bus, help them get on and off. Had to do it for 2 months. At the end of the 2 months, they said, "Well, you did good, Joey, and you don't have to do it anymore." He said, "No, I don't want to give it up. I'm going to continue to do it." So what did that mean? It meant that there were people that recognized him, that he would say hello to, like that. It brought something into his life. Mm-hmm. And so we had the program was a pilot. It was to study models. So we actually ran the program under DCJS for about a year and a quarter. During that time, we helped 54 clients. 51 of them did not reoffend. And then the money disappeared. And we were just totally upset.
I'm upset, and I'm just now hearing of it, yes.
So our probation department went to our county leadership, and our county executive decided that this program was important enough, and so he put the money from the county into the budget.
Beautiful.
The program continues. It's actually been able to expand because it doesn't have the limitations that were put on by DCJS. So now we're also getting referrals of kids that are in truancy or maybe are in danger of being suspended from school. Mm-hmm. The program is a wonderful program. And now the county, as a follow-up to that, the county is developing plans because of the change of age that you can bring a charge of adulthood.
Yeah.
from 16 to 18. So we're working with the county to develop programming to target that 16 to 18 group that has previously been dealt with as criminals.
We here in our building every few weeks or so, our general manager will sometimes show a TED Talk or will,
Sure.
there's some that are
Good
so
stuff.
powerful.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any coincidences. So yesterday the topic was in managing individuals and managing those who are younger, the millennials or possibly even younger, and talked about how the fact that, there is this instant gratification and you develop these relationships through technology, but to be able to have long-term relationships, to look people in the eye, to know that not everything happens in the snap of a finger, that really great things take time and that it can take a year. It may take 2 years.
Or longer.
Right. And to be able to, what reminded me of when you said that young man said, I'm not going to stop, because people recognized him. And he, there's a recognition that you are a human being, that you have worth, that look at you, that I am so glad that you are here. If you think about it, all of us, this isn't any slam on my coworkers, but not one person this morning said, wow, I'm glad to see you. I think it's just something that we take for granted, and you ask people, how are you? But they don't mean it.
Social networking has isolated people very significantly.
Yeah.
And it's sad. But I must say, you have to adapt to the times.
Yes, you do.
So our 24-hour hotline now also takes texts.
Right, which is powerful, but I love the fact that there still is and must be contact with people. And
yes,
one-on-one.
I totally agree, and I'm not a texter, so
yeah. So you use the technology to bring people in so that they can, obviously, like you said, you need to speak the language and use the tools that everyone is using, but to have that one-on-one it's just very powerful. And too, I think the word accountability sometimes gets lost in our society with a lot of folks. It's always someone else's fault. Someone else did it. It must be this. It must be that. So sometimes it's even hard to have a conversation because people get very defensive and it's always someone else. And how powerful this program is. Like when you said the funding went away, but now the county executive has it back. I'm like, this program should be like up to the age of 60 or more. Like,
well, it's wonderful to work in a county where there's acknowledgement that if you do an important job, the county will back you. Mm-hmm. I think that's unusual.
Yeah.
It's empowered family to grow to be the agency that it is. I want to talk a little bit about another program which I'm very, very committed to and is in jeopardy. It's a program, the feds call it a transitional living program for older adolescents. It targets 16 to 20-year-olds, to up to 21, who are homeless and have no family support.
Wow.
It's a tough population. Most of the time they haven't succeeded in school. They may have a substance abuse or mental health issue. We got a grant from the feds in 1991, and we opened a facility in Kingston, 6 beds and up to 3 babies. So because, we didn't have the resources to just have a maternity or just not, and so we did both. That's sort of who we are.
Right.
And then in 1998, we were able to open a second one in Ellenville. And the program has been terrific. It's called Midway. It's just a great program. It's had very, very significant success. Kids have been able to complete their education, gain life skills, become vocationally ready. Generally, by the time they leave us, they have at least a part-time job. We had 2 girls leave us and go into living colleges last year. And not a chance in the world that either one of them would have been able to do that without the program.
Right.
And so it's an incredibly powerful program that we've run since 1991. We're very committed to it. It runs on a 3-year cycle with the funding from HHS, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Okay.
And this year they announced that they're not going to put out any renewal requests in 2018. Now, the funding for the program from HHS runs out at the end of April. So that leaves 2/3 of a year or $130,000 shortfall. And it's,
Okay, so we need to make that up.
Yeah, we need to make that up.
We need to make that up.
Absolutely. And
that
I'm not
needs
saying
to
that.
happen. I'm saying
exactly. Well, you know exactly what I'm saying. And, but there are shortfalls in any, aside from that. But suddenly now that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And so I just want to say that we feel, and I can document the tremendous amount of money that we are saving by helping young people and helping homeless families and helping domestic violence survivors and helping people with mental health issues, many of whom would end up in the emergency room or in prison, who are able to gain stability. Mm-hmm. And it's money well spent.
Yep.
But if the government plans to cut services, they'll spend it anyway, but they won't have any positive effects of it.
That's the thing.
So it's really damaging.
Yes.
And very, for somebody that worked on these issues for now more years than I want to admit, it's very hard to see what's going on now. And people talking, as if it's not a person. It's just a dollar. Oh, we could cut $4.6 trillion over the next 10 years.
Right.
And to realize what that means to people that are, that are in poverty now, that are struggling now, that won't have any opportunities, that won't be able to find jobs, that it's just not right.
And I think it's powerful what you said, and people don't realize the money still will be spent.
Oh, no question.
So you're not saving that.
No, you're not.
And in reality, you are doing more damage and more harm for more generations to come.
Well, if you can stabilize a family's situation, find them affordable housing, help find a job, from then on, the people are going to pretty much, hopefully, take care of themselves.
Yep.
The alternative is to pay for foster care for the children, prison perhaps, a psych unit perhaps, a long-term mental health facility. These cost a lot of money.
Yep. Yes, they do.
And does it help the person? It may help them survive. Hopefully it'll help them be stable, but it's not going to put that family back together.
No.
And it's not going to help the children with the damage of having their family come apart.
Right.
So, if our leadership was really looking at taking care of it, spending our money the most appropriate and effective way they could, they'd be making very different decisions. Yeah. And from where I sit, it's really hard to see.
I agree. I completely agree. I'm looking, Michael, believe it or not, we have 5 minutes left. So I want to, as I always ask before we get going, are there certain things, and I think it's appropriate to talk about some events that you guys have coming up, because that's an opportunity for the community to participate and help out.
And to learn about the agency.
Exactly. So what do you have coming up?
Well, next Thursday, the 9th of November, we have a thing called the Red Carpet. And it happens that 2 young filmmakers made a film about family, talked to some of our long-term consumers, and described who we are. And so that's going to be introduced to the community at the Senate House in Kingston. It's a fundraiser. If people are interested in coming to it, they can call 331-7080 and ask for Jess Davis. The other thing, which is a big event, is our turkey trot on Thanksgiving Day. It's held in New Paltz, and it's a very big event. 5K run, a lot of other stuff, and fun.
Cool.
And then you work off the Thanksgiving dinner before you go home and eat it. So if people are interested in signing up for that, they can call Family of New Paltz 255-8801. Beyond that, we're about to send the agency twice a year sends out a thing that we call Family Ties, and it's a way of telling a story about some of what we write, what we do, and informing the community in a nice way, in a soft way. Mm-hmm. And so we're about to do a mailing of about 18,000 of them, and then we'll do our annual solicitation.
Nice.
I have to say, for your listeners, These programs are really important, and they're in jeopardy.
Yeah.
At best, the government is not increasing the monies that they're paying for it, and in many instances, they're cutting it. So agencies like Family have to turn more to the public, and we think we make a big difference in our community. We're very proud of what we've achieved, and we ask for your help.
Michael, thank you.
And not just
very
our
much.
help. Agencies like us.
Right.
You know, we're not unique. There's many good agencies in Dutchess County, perhaps not as broad in their scope, but certainly doing great work. River Haven is one that was a sister agency of ours.
Yep.
There are many. Mm-hmm. So the community's got to step up, at least until the government recognizes its responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Michael, if people, in our last couple of minutes, how can people contact if they want to help financially, help volunteer?
We're always looking for volunteers.
Okay.
We have some employment opportunities.
Okay.
They can go to our website, www.familyofwoodstockinc.org. They can call our central number, 845-331-7080. Ask about events. Ask about training opportunities. We have a terrific training program that we expect anybody to do meaningful work with us to do. It's been described as 40 hours, but we just added a couple of new things. But it involves mental health first aid, safety talk. There's a lot of really good programming that we train people in, and listening skills. And I have to say personally, I think the greatest gift that you can give anybody is to listen to them. Rather than telling them what to do, rather than telling them how they screwed up, they know all that already. What they're looking for is somebody that cares enough to listen to them.
Mm-hmm. Michael, thank you very, very much.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you for being here. Whatever station you're listening to this show on this morning, please know you can go to their website. In the upper right-hand corner, there is the magnifying glass for search. Just type in touch, and this show will come up. We will have links to the website and also phone numbers in case you're running around this morning and weren't able to write it down. If you'd like,
join Family.
And what?
Come and join Family in whatever way you want. We're doing a lot of. I didn't even talk about food insecurity. We're doing a ton of stuff.
Well, you're going to have to
that.
come back.
I would.
You just need to come back, or else the show needs to be a couple. But you'll come back. But thanks to all of you. If you'd like to be on the show to talk about what is important to you, please email me, beth.christie@townsquaremedia.com. You can call 845-471-1500. My extension is 159. I am on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and you'll find me. I'm probably on too many places, but you can find me, and we'd love to have you on the program. Take care of yourself and those you love, and we'll see you right here next week.